And so
hi there, everyone. I'm Deb.
And I'm Beth, and this is the Beth and Deb Show.
Yep, back again with more thrilling topics. Today, we're going to be talking more about conflict, and specifically what kinds of listening skills to apply when you're in a conflict conversation. Can be really, really hard to do that because it's emotional, right? And we're not always the best communicators when we're emotional, but we have done a conflict series in the past, so just a few reminders about that, and you can go look that up if you're interested in the details. But things we always remind people to do and remind ourselves is give yourself time to cool down and process, but not to like stew and get yourself even more worked up and angry. So like if you step away from the situation, you're not trying to avoid it.
Yeah.
Brush it under the rug, or just like ruminate and get yourself even more worked up. You're trying to let your body calm down physiologically, right? That's the key. And then maybe while you're cooling down, think about, is this really worth the fight? And if it is, what's a good outcome? Like, what do I really want to have happen? Let's focus on how we can turn this into a constructive situation. And then key, don't email or text when you are feeling worked up.
Yeah.
That never goes well, right? Like, it's just it'll come out in your words even worse in email and text than if you were in person. So avoid that. But today we're going to talk about when you do have that conflict conversation with someone, you've allowed yourself to cool down, how do you need to approach that conversation with good listening skills, right? A lot of times I think we approach conflict as, I need you to understand that I'm right.
Oh, yeah, girl. Now you're speaking my language.
But I think that is really unhelpful.
Yeah.
And that will not, it won't get you the desired outcome, right? Like usually our hope is, if we care about the person that we're in conflict with, I don't think you want them to just like always be wrong about everything, right? Like you want them to feel heard and validated too, because the truth is that there's truth to every side of the story, right?
Yeah.
Most of the time, people are acting in good faith, and there's a reason behind their perspective and what they've done. It's not like they're just trying to be a bad guy or whatever it is that you're in conflict about. You just need to come at it from the perspective of like, why did you do what was it from your point of view? What was driving your actions or behaviors? And then how did that interact with what was driving my actions and behaviors to make a misunderstanding or a miscommunication? And that happens a lot in especially in romantic relationships or partnerships all the time. We're just not on the same, we don't have the same life experiences or insecurities or, different filters that we view the world through. So I think if we come at conflict with understanding the other person's perspective, a really key goal in that, which can really be hard if we're used to that mindset of, I need to make you see how I'm right. That's not going to help. It's I need to see how you think you're right about this.
Yeah.
So that I can understand why, why this conflict even happened in the first place. And a key tip to that is just don't talk.
Yeah.
Listen, be processing their information without thinking of the rebuttal of this is why that's wrong. Because I know I do that a lot in my head, because I love to be very logical and point out logical flaws in the argument, but that doesn't help. So listening to understand, not talking, just letting the other person give their point of view.
And I think to what you're saying, it's really about learning about the relationship that you're in, so that you can be better next time, right? So that's as you're thinking about what is the goal, my goal is to understand where they're coming from so I can learn how to maybe not be in this situation again. and even if it's a person you don't care about, maybe it's someone you really don't love all that much.
Right.
You still don't want to be in that situation again.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's still good advice to be like, okay, I'm coming into this with trying to understand where that person's coming from, because right now where they're coming from doesn't make sense to me.
Yes, and that's often difficult to realize that you think your position makes perfect sense, and so does the other person, right? Like, from their point of view, it makes sense why their feelings were hurt, or why they hurt your feelings and didn't realize it, right? And you just have to kind of be able to take all of your judgment out of the situation and say, nobody's exactly 100% right or wrong in this situation, and maybe nobody's even wrong, right? Like, maybe no one intended to hurt someone else's feelings. But I think you're right that the ultimate goal is to be more sensitive to how the other person functions in their mind. And I know just in like a marriage or a long-term relationship, you have to start understanding what's my partner's triggers and what do I need to, like, because like for me and my spouse, morning time is not good. Like, he's up and ready to go, and like, what's your day gonna be like? Let's talk. Yeah. And I'm just like, I can't stand you right now, which, you know, in the beginning of our relationship hurt his feelings. He thought, that's mean. Yeah. That is just really mean for you to do that, and you should be nice to me in the morning. And I'm like, it's actually not about you at all. Like, if anybody was trying to talk to me in the morning, it's not something to take personally. And so our compromise is like, he gives me space to give me time to be able to
warm up,
to be nice. Yeah. So it's not about like one person's approach being right or wrong. Yeah. It's just different, and you have to learn how to like negotiate those things sometimes.
Yeah. It's great. I think on top of realizing, okay, what is my real intended, what do I want this outcome to look like? How can I listen to understand to achieve that outcome of learning to be better in this relationship? I think something I talk a lot with clients about is paying attention to the nonverbal behavior of both yourself and the other person. So much of listening, we know, is not actually hearing the words, but it's paying attention to the whole message. That includes their body language, their posture, their facial expressions. And it's a little bit dangerous to talk about this here, because I think when we're really fired up in the middle of a conflict, we might misinterpret their eyebrow raise as, so now you're going to fire that eyebrow at me, you know? But I think it's just an important reminder that we are taking in the whole message.
Yes.
Right? And we're paying attention to how our body is responding to that. So if you have really strong facial expressions, I have a really strong facial expression. People are always like, your eyes are so big, and I'm like, I do workshops and I'm like, what is happening, And so I have a tendency when I am fired up about really anything, excited, angry, whatever, to have really loud nonverbal behavior. So sometimes I have to really be cautious about fixing my face.
Oh my God, yes.
Remember that plaque you have on your office? She's not responsible for what her face is doing.
Yeah, when you're talking, I'm not responsible for what my face is doing in response. Okay. I can't remember the exact phrase, but that's exactly true for me. I'm not as much as like loud, like in that way, but there's something about my facial expressions where it's very obvious how I really feel about what you're saying. And even though I may not try to, like sometimes, yes, I like I am a big eye roller. That's one of my something that I know about myself. But even just like, small things, it's just very obvious how I feel. And so that's always worked against me when I don't want to communicate that, but like if I'm trying to kind of work against those types of feelings, they still come out on my face. So that's something that, with people who are close to you, you can discuss that kind of thing, but if it's like somebody you work with, they may not understand that It's not that you're wanting to communicate that. It's just like involuntary.
And sometimes it's very subtle.
Yes.
Right? You know, sometimes they might say something, and this is something we work with our counseling students on a lot, right? Is realizing when they said this, your face shifted just a bit.
Imperceptibly, almost.
Yes.
But just enough.
Just enough.
Yeah.
That the person then interpreted
Yeah.
your just... You know, like it can be very tiny.
Yes.
And so if you find yourself like not being great in conflict,
It could be the nonverbal.
it may be this place to start, right? Like really, I sometimes have folks like look in the mirror and like imagine themselves feeling angry, imagine themselves feeling hurt, and like really try to have your face kind of show what's happening. But truthfully, I was thinking about this just this week with all the Zoom we're doing.
Yeah.
It actually has been really great to be able to like see how your face responds to different conversations or different, you know, people that you're meeting with. So I recommend trying to do any kind of conflict face to face with a person. But if you need practice and you're terrible at facial expressions, like have some practice Zoom sessions. Yeah, seriously.
Can we have a Zoom fight? So
let's just get on Zoom and let's fight it out.
That's funny.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. So, yes, nonverbals. And then the final thing is really important. You may be knowing that you're trying to understand the person's point of view, but it's really important to make sure to check with that person. So like paraphrasing, reflecting back to them what they've just said from their perspective with no interpretation from you, right? So that's the difficult part, is that our natural intuition is to say, so you've just told me something about like how you were feeling about this, and I would maybe say, okay, so what I heard you say was that you were feeling this way, but, you know, but that's not how I really meant it. You know, like to kind of to defend yourself, even when it's not really your intention to do that. It's just something is inside us to say, you're saying I made you feel bad about something, but I want you to know, and you need to agree with me on this. That was not my fault that you felt that way. That was your fault that
I'm sorry you felt that way.
Yes, I'm sorry if you were disrespected. Instead of I'm sorry I disrespected.
That is going to be one of our what not to say in a conflict.
Yes,
I'm sorry you feel that way, but that's not what I meant. Right. That gets no one anywhere good.
No, because it's not. You got to take responsibility for what you've done. So,
but I think another good example. Let's say you and I are roommates, right? And you come home and you're like, hey, you know, it sort of bothers me that, you know, when you're at home and you make dishes, you don't wash your dishes, right? And so you're coming to me with like this specific problem, and then to your point, I'm like, okay, so let me make sure I understand what you're saying. You're saying I'm lazy.
Yes.
Right? That's the
That's a misinterpretation of what they've actually said.
Exactly. But that gets people into trouble a lot.
Yes.
Right.
By making those assumptions and taking it a step further than what actually was actually said.
Because the natural response for you back is like, no, I didn't.
That's not what I said at all.
Not what I said at all.
You're not listening to me.
Now we're down that rabbit hole. You don't ever listen to me.
Oh my God. Yes, and then the fight turns into a fight about something absolutely different, and you forget, like, I can't remember how many times my husband and I have come back. What were we actually like, we had a big blow up, but I don't remember what even started this conflict, because we got into patterns of conflict that we just naturally have that had nothing to do with the dishes, right? It's just more about, you don't listen to me, and why are you using that snarky tone with me, and da-da-da, you know, all this stuff. So...
And I think maybe the last thing, we didn't write this down, but I think the last thing is to realize you need to take a time out.
Yes.
Right? If we're getting way down that rabbit hole, we both need to just like take a time out and go back to square one.
Yeah.
Back to the tips at the beginning in all the other series that we've done on conflict resolution.
Yeah.
Which is don't don't try to resolve conflict when you are at a high emotional state. It's just never going to work.
Yeah, it's just going to be more of a blow up, and you're more likely to say things you don't mean or don't intend to, and that aren't going to help resolve that conflict. And I think that that's one of the keys for some people is allowing that time, because that's hard. For me, I need that time. For my husband, he can't stand that time because he wants to solve it now. That was something we definitely had to learn, that it's not bad to just
step away.
Give time. Some people need time. It helps emotions come down. It helps some processing to happen. Like for me, I'm a huge internal processor. I can't, I don't know what to say right in the moment, so I'm more likely to lash out and push away with my words.
And I think that if you find yourself in a kind of pattern of one of you calls a timeout, the other of you goes chasing.
Yes.
If you're in that pattern, you have to, when you're not in a conflict, come to an agreement that says, when either of us call a timeout, we have to we'll set a timer, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, whatever it is.
I think the Gottmans say 20 minutes is the optimal time for you can physiologically calm down, but you're also able to re-engage with the conflict.
Yeah, and that comes back to what we said at the beginning. Like, don't do it right away, but don't stew on it.
Yeah.
So it can't be right away, and it can't be 6 days later.
Yeah. But you're right. It has to be ground rules that you set before the conflict actually happens.
Yeah.
Which you can't do with every single person in your life, but if it's an important relationship, you can do that.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's good.
I think
we'll never be in conflict again.
Job.
Okay, until next time.
Talk to you next time.
Bye.